Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Today's panel is one of many that we are hosting here for our Military Inspired Arts program. Military Inspired Arts, MIA, is returning for its third year, and this year we are doing it a little differently. MIA is an opportunity to showcase military, artisans, and civilians who have a passion for military art. This year, the artist exhibition will begin viewing on Tuesday, August the 3rd, both in person and virtually. Our artist talks will occur in September, virtually and in person. And interactive events such as today's panel discussion, a session on mindfulness and meditation, and a session on art therapy will be scheduled between now and October. So please be sure to follow our IG pages, our Facebook page, and be on the lookout for our monthly newsletter. So today I would like to introduce you to our panel moderator, but first I'd also like to thank our partners, Combined Arms from Houston, Harris County Precinct 1, and the Young Center, and our sponsor, AARP. Today's panel moderator is Brian Escobedo. Brian was born and raised in Houston, Texas. He did witness September 11th on TV when he was in the 10th grade. It was then that Brian decided he would dedicate himself to becoming a Marine. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps right out of high school in 2003, served 5 years honorably as a sergeant and combat engineer where he specialized in explosives. Brian is a Purple Heart recipient with 3 back-to-back tours in Operation Iraqi Freedom from 2005 to 2007. Brian earned his Purple Heart for multiple blast injuries while in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq. Brian returned to Houston to pursue his BA in Communication Studies, so he could probably do this better than me, with 2 minors in philosophy and psychology. He graduated from UHD, Go Gators, in 2014. From his former career, Brian has developed a profound commitment to excellence, dynamic problem solving, and an ability to thrive in high pressure situations. While in college, he began to create and run a nonprofit program for military veterans. He began establishing an employment and veteran peer-to-peer mentoring program. Seeking to apply his military leadership to local community needs, Brian became deeply immersed in volunteer leadership. After testifying before Texas State Congress, Brian was inspired to teach civics in high school through the Joe Foss Institute. He then wrote a 9-step transition workshop to help veterans define their post-military identity and lectured for 2 years. He served as a suicide prevention mentor, mentored adults and youth, facilitated mediations and deliberations, served as a platoon leader with the Mission Continues, focusing on long-term hunger relief in impoverished neighborhoods, and established a supply drive for refugees of the Syrian civil war. Brian was invited to start Combined Arms team in 2016. He helped grow the organization from 7 to 120 agencies while writing a handbook for systems approach collaboration. Brian created a method of collaborative problem solving, which he named the Collaboration Committees, and founded 7 committees on mental health, social services, diversity and inclusion, volunteerism, education, employment, and special immigration visas. Brian currently leads the Combined Arms Technology team and runs their expansion efforts as an advisor to cities seeking to establish a data-driven collaborative model. Most recently, Brian completed 3 leadership courses at Rice University, LDR Leadership, and Leadership Houston class. Brian is also an avid public speaker and gave the Veterans Day keynote address to a global audience of 14,000 for P66 in November 2020. Brian is a subject matter expert in veteran transition and a thought leader in the nonprofit industry. So today, please help me welcome Brian Escobedo.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Happy to be here, y'all. And all right. Hello, everybody. Here today, very excited to introduce our panel. And so we have 3 fantastic people here today, and of course, we're going to be discussing PTSD from three different vantage points. And so to understand that, I'm first going to introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to allow two of them to tell their story, and then we'll go directly into panel questions. So we want lots of questions from you. But before we begin, it's important that we hear the bio of each one of these panelists. So we're going to begin with Earl London, right here to my right. So Earl London III was born at Fort Benning, Georgia, and raised in Sumter, South Carolina. Earl graduated from Lakewood High School with his eyes set on carrying on the legacy of his family's military service. Shortly after, he enlisted in the Army in 2004 and had the honor to serve with the 82nd Airborne Division in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He has been heavily involved in mentoring youth and volunteering in the Houston area, and is a formally trained peer mentor. His main purpose is to rally the veteran community and to inform them about the benefits of physical activity. As you can see right here, this guy's biceps. He is providing free fitness classes, wellness events, and seminars to help educate in an environment that will be welcoming for veterans and their families. Through teamwork, motivation, and encouragement, he will strive to teach the other veterans how to break their own mental thresholds through exercise. Earl is a Purple Heart recipient and the third generation in his family to serve in the 82nd Airborne. So yeah, outstanding, Earl. All right, next we have Corporal Will Moran, as you can see here on the opposite side of the table. And so Corporal Will Moran is a prior service United States Army soldier who served multiple tours in Iraq as a member of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment and with the 712th Military Police, assigned to the Quick Reaction Force, the QRF, and as a protective security detail member, including the Counter Assault Team, or the CAT team. Corporal Moran is a basic Army instructor. By the way, that means you're a drill sergeant, right?
No, it would be the second part of drill school where we start teaching them skills rather than the brown round.
Gotcha.
Or the knife hand.
I'm sure equally visible for the student, right? All right. So Corporal Moran is a basic Army instructor and a small group instructor through the United States Army. As a civilian police officer, Corporal Moran is a certified mental health officer that was assigned to the Mental Health Special Operations Unit of Harris County, Precinct 1 for 10+ years before transferring to the Downtown Courthouse Complex as a Crisis Intervention Team member, that's CIT. Along with this experience, Corporal Moran has attended the basic and advanced SWAT hostage rescue, high-risk tactical operations, officer survival, dynamic entry and raid planning, tactical command and supervision, alert terrorism response, VIP dignitary protection for law enforcement, executive protection security specialist, and counter ambush. So that's quite a list there. Corporal Moran is a 2-time guest lecturer at Edge Hill University in Lancashire, England, in the United Kingdom, invited to speak on mental health and the Texas criminal justice system for students and faculty of the Houston and Social Care Medicine College. While in England, Corporal Moran was also asked to speak at Her Majesty's Prison Ranby for British Black History Month in Nottingham, and with social workers at the Salford Foundation in Salford, Manchester, on the topic of mental health. Corporal Moran is currently assigned full-time to the Downtown Courthouse Complex as a supervisor. Corporal Moran has secondary duties as a military liaison officer, a team leader with the Special Response Group, and is part-time instructor with the training division for mental health for the mental health officer, for the mental health officer, crisis intervention response, cultural diversity, de-escalation techniques, traumatic brain injury, and trauma-affected veteran courses. Corporal Moran is the co-author of an academic research project with Edge Hill University, Department of Psychology, entitled Understanding the Relationship Between Life Course Psychological Traits and Officer Discretion, comparing responses of the military veterans and non-veteran law enforcement officers. The preliminary findings will be presented at the annual conference of the National Gang Crime Research Center in Chicago, Illinois, on August the 4th this year. It's coming up very soon. We'd love to hear a little more about that later. All right, and finally, our third panelist, right here in the middle, Dr. Sean Fitzpatrick. Dr. Sean Fitzpatrick is a psychotherapist in private practice and the executive director of the Young Center in Houston, Texas. His book, The Ethical Imagination, Exploring Fantasy and Desire in the Analytical Psychology, was published by Routledge in August of 2019. Sean holds a master's degree in religious studies from Rice University and in clinical psychology from the University of Houston Clear Lake. He received his PhD in psychology with a specialization in Jungian studies from Saybrook University. He is a senior fellow in the American Leadership Forum. Sean serves on the board of the Network of Behavioral Health Providers in Houston. So welcome, Dr. Fitzpatrick. All right, fantastic. So that's the introductions. You can see here we have a star-studded cast here of the panel. Very excited to get into our conversation now. But before we get into the questions, we first want to give some time to both Officer Moran here and Earl Lundin to tell their story. The purpose of this is to get some firsthand experience or some firsthand accounts of the subject matter today, which is PTSD. So we want to begin first with Corporal Moran. If you can, take about 5 minutes and let's hear your story.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Corporal Moran. Just like many a veteran here in the United States, I was a younger man when 911 happened, and that had a profound effect on me. So when 911 happened, it was a feeling of the country is now at war, and I have not done my military service. So at the time, I was 26 years old, and I thought to myself, you know what, time is running out. This is my time to serve the country. So when it happened, I went out and I spoke to different recruiters. At the time, I was in college and I was studying kinesiology, and the desire to serve took over. So when I went out and spoke to different recruiters, the desire was to actually join the infantry, but they told me because I was colorblind that wasn't going to happen. So I didn't even know at the time. So I figured colorblind. How am I colorblind if I'm not running lights and everything? So but I ended up getting in. I ended up joining, and I got sent to the 11th Armored Cav. And that unit. At first, when we got there, they let us. They made sure that we understood it was a unit that doesn't deploy. It's a unit that trains other units, Army and Marine units, for desert mechanized warfare. But because of the nature of the war in Iraq and of course the war in Afghanistan, changing from war in Afghanistan never really, but the war in Iraq changing from conventional to unconventional, more like the Afghan fight was. The training at Fort Irwin changed to what they call civilians on the battlefield, where you didn't know who your enemy was. So because that unit specialized in learning current tactics, they ended up deploying us. So we deployed in 2005 as an armored maneuver unit who also had specialization with current enemy TTPs at the time, tactics, procedures. So my first deployment was spent as part of a protective security detail while in Iraq, usually around Camp Taji and Route Sword, kind of more in an area partially Sunni and partially Shia, due to the sectarian nature of what combat was like and what the society was like in Iraq at the time. So, as you can expect, or as any veteran will say, the fight was sometimes against the enemy, but for the most part, it seems like we were fighting IEDs, IEDs and incoming fire, incoming artillery, mortars, and things like that. So the challenge, I think, for me when I got back was how to understand that is not here. That Iraq is not here. Iraq is not the United States. It's not Houston. It's not Texas. So the challenge, I think, for most guys like myself, are how to stay calm when you see that package in the road. How to stay, how not to serpentine and swerve when you're coming under a bridge. Things like that. That it's you train to do something long enough, and it's almost like it takes over. You don't even think about it. It just takes over. Like when I was qualifying with my AR-15 as a police officer, I emptied my magazine. I took my magazine out, got another one, and without thinking about it, I took that magazine and hit myself in the head. Because when you're wearing the bitch helmet, you hit your magazine on the head. You hit it to pack the ammo and slap it in. So I did it, and I did it before I realized that I didn't have my Kevlar on. And with that the wooziness I saw, going the target started getting blurry, like I was boxing. But it's things like that. You have to understand that you've been trained to do certain things, you've experienced certain things, and you have to find a way to normalize. And you can't unlearn those things. They're there. They're ingrained. But you can learn to live with it. You can learn to live past it. You can learn to appreciate it and laugh like we're doing.
I'll say thank you, Corporal Moran. All right, and so if you're just tuning in right now, we've done our introduction. So we have 3 panelists here. This is part 2 where we're doing stories. So we're doing 2 5-minute stories. Corporal Moran just got done with his piece. Now we're going on to Earl London. So Earl, in 5 minutes, let's hear your story.
Yes. Well, my name is Earl London III. Like we spoke earlier, my 3rd generation paratrooper, 82nd Airborne all day. And, I went to school for 1 year and run track, but, I feel like, the Army was calling my name for sure. And I definitely always wanted to be, do something for my family, be a provider for my family. So that was one of the things that I definitely wanted to do. And so I think that I felt like it was my time to do so. And so I went ahead and in the Army, and wanted to go ahead and do my career and serve, went airborne, and got that contract to go to the 82nd Airborne Division, which was amazing. In March of 2008, I was injured in Afghanistan, and that's pretty much when my life changed. I was hit by a vehicle ID while I was in the house that we was in. I was part of the personal security detachment team for the colonel. And we went out that day and staying at district center outside the fob where we were at, and we thought it was just like any other day. And but all of a sudden we got hit, and the house ended up collapsing down on me. And so I was buried under the house for like 4 to 5 hours, fully conscious in my head, just like what's next, not knowing if I'm alive or dead, or if I'm gonna get through this. But that military mindset stepped in and saying, okay, I can't quit, don't panic, and just evaluate myself, see if what I'm capable of doing down here, and just be mentally tough, which is what the military trained you to do. And so I was able to be down there, in my head, and really pull myself together to be able to get through that one of the roughest patches in my life, and everything, not knowing what's gonna come next, but I know I had to fight through that. And so I was down there like 4 or 5 hours, so my team was finally able to pull me out. And when I got back, I had a full body injury, had a left leg nerve damage, drop foot, shoulder injury, I had nerve damage to my shoulder, TBI, traumatic brain injury, PTSD. I had a L4, L5 injury to my lower back. So I was just like from head to toe, I was out of commission. But one of the important things is just mindset, how you choose what you're gonna do next when it comes from that. And so I was like, yo, this is not it for me, And so once I retired and got out, it was tough, for me, like, okay, now, I feel like I was going in the military to honor my family and serve my country. And once I got out, it's like, what's next? For a lot of us. And like and so that thing's hardwired in us from being in the military every day, doing the same thing, knowing that, you gotta complete the mission, for your country, for your team, for your battles. And now what? What's my mission now? What am I going to do now when it's just me and my family? And I gotta be the one to provide. I gotta be one to protect my family. And what do I do next? And I think that's one of the biggest things, for me, that it was tough for me getting out of the military, on top of my PTSD, dealing with that, on top of all the injuries that I was going with, what's next for me. For me, it was like the veteran organizations that helped pull me out of situations. Unbeknownst to me at the time, my wife ended up calling Wounded Warrior Project and getting me out the house. And, I didn't really want to go anywhere. I was just in a room in the dark all day, and not just, to myself, not trying to, had you know, like, this is it for me. But you know, my wife, she called one of the organizations for me, ended up getting me out the house, taking me to Top Golf, and just with that camaraderie back once again. And it was amazing to get. I didn't know what I was missing and everything. And now, you know, getting involved with other organizations like Travis Main Foundation, Michigan Continues, and also, you know, Combined Arms, you know, embrace me with open arms, and, you know, let me know there's life after the military, and this is what we could do if we do it together. And so that's my mindset always. Is like, my new purpose now is just to continue to help others and get others out those dark holes that they're in. Like I always say, I experienced in a dark place where I had to overcome. And a lot of people mentally, whether it be veterans, they are in that dark spot, in their dark hole sometimes in their life. And so, you know, what can we do to get you out of there? Well, let's continue to have fellowship with one another. Let's continue to show you what other things that's out there for you to get involved in. And like I said, that's my new purpose, just to help others and to bring them to these other organizations to get the help that they need and deserve.
Outstanding, Earl. Thank you so much for sharing that. So y'all, you've heard two great stories so far, and these are different ways of both of you, Corporal Rand. What stuck out to me from your story is going through it and saying, okay, the battlefield isn't here now. And for you, Earl, going through the process of physically and mentally recovering, you still had family obligations. So it was a now what. So for you, it was it's over there, not here. For you, it was now what do I do as a provider for my family? But both ways you were chewing on or trying to digest the trauma that you just experienced or the struggles you'd gone through in war, coming back to regular society, and then going through this process, this sort of life-changing experiences, turning a page, one chapter to another. And so I think for me, from my own personal experience, you're experiencing that transition, that mind change, right? Mm-hmm. That transformation from the battlefield to civilian life, right? And you're doing it while experiencing PTSD and TBI, and in your case as well, Corporal Moran. And so, but before we get into what we did about it, what happened in the rest of the story, let's first get a better understanding of what PTSD is. Let's get a better understanding, clinical understanding of how it's diagnosed. What is PTSD? What is it not? So I want to begin now with Dr. Fitzpatrick. If you can, the first question is, how is PTSD diagnosed?
Yeah, so a great question, and I'll take a step, just one step back and say, well, what is trauma, right?
Yeah.
So the word trauma is sitting right in the heart of that diagnosis, and there's a difference between experiencing a trauma and being diagnosable with PTSD. So 87% of people in the military experience a trauma over the course of their lives. 87%. Their trauma is the simple definition is it's exposure to a life-threatening event. So, and it can be one that is real, like your life was actually at risk, or just that you perceive it, it doesn't matter to the psyche, right? It doesn't matter whether your life is actually at risk or not. Your body is automatically going to respond, right? And you have very simple responses that we share with most animals, which are to run away, or to fight if we can't run away, or freeze, so that the threat hopefully passes without noticing it. So that's the traumatic response. Now, that doesn't mean that you're then diagnosed with PTSD. So post-traumatic stress disorder is, the simple way of understanding it is it's when our responses to trauma interfere with our life and they don't stop, right? So Corporal Moran was talking about coming back to the States and having a hard time keeping himself from going serpentine under the underpasses and seeing a package and treating it as though it was a real risk, right? That's a classic example of what we call hyperarousal, problems with hyperarousal. And it's multiplied by the training that people in the military get, right? So Earl was talking about, well, we're trained to be mentally tough, right? So we're trained to continue to respond in these ways. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, has 3 or 4 clusters of things that we're looking for. One of them is that experience of hyperarousal. There's a threat everywhere, and you can't not look for it. Another is the classic thing that they show us in Hollywood, which is intrusive thoughts or images, nightmares, where continuing to re-experience the same the traumatic event again and again and again in our imagination, and it disrupts our life. The third cluster of things we're looking for is avoidance. And avoidance is just an inability to engage in activities that remind us of the event or might help to evoke it for it. And I should say that substance use, which is a huge problem for veterans, is a part of that, right? So we just don't want to have the experience, so we use substances to keep that from happening. The fourth cluster is around just disturbances in mood, what you might say is like anxiety and depression and guilt feelings, feelings of self-blame. That's the package that makes up PTSD. And PTSD that we start to diagnose it 30 days after an event. So 30 days on for the rest of your life, you can be diagnosed with PTSD.
Wow, that's excellent. That's a good way to shorten this. I want to kind of repeat this. So the four main pillars were hypervigilance, nightmares or re-experiencing the trauma, nightmares or flashbacks. Then it's avoidance, and then it's a disturbance of mood. Yeah, so those are the four major things. And it's after 30 days after the traumatic event has happened, and then from that point for the rest of your life. So that's PTSD.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And so now we're here with two soldiers. Now is PTSD just for veterans? Let's dispel the rumor now. And we think of PTSD, it's almost becoming synonymous with veterans. So tell us a little bit more about not the secondary yet, but yeah, what all? Just talk generally about PTSD as a thing.
Yeah. So again, it's anybody can experience a threat to life. It happens to be part of the daily work of people in the military. 13% of veterans are diagnosable with PTSD. 6% of the general population in the United States are going to be diagnosable over the course of their lifetime.
Wow.
So you see, it's double the frequency among military populations. But yeah, anyone who experiences a threat, and that doesn't mean, as I say, it doesn't mean that you will be diagnosable. It just means that that can happen. Yeah.
And so 6% for civilian population for PTSD, and then 13%, double.
Yeah.
Because I guess the proximity. I imagine it'd be similar for people in law enforcement and firefighting. I imagine. I'm not sure if you know any stats on that, but so once again, there's a traumatic experience. You are 30 days afterward, at least 30 days afterwards, you are experiencing a hypervigilance, a hyper awareness or hyper arousal. You are having flashbacks or nightmares. You are avoiding by either you have avoidance behavior or you're engaging in substance abuse. And there's a disturbance of your regular mood, as in guilt, anxiety, depression. And that happens 30 days after. Now that's 6% civilian and 13% military population. So that's a good definition where we can kind of remember those points and we move on with the rest of the questions now. So let's talk a little bit about going back to Corporal Moran and to Earl. With you, Corporal Moran, how did you deal with what you were experiencing when you came back? What was your first reaction, and how did it? When was there a meaningful action that you took?
It was difficult for me. I knew after my first deployment that I did not want to be. I just did not want to stay in the regular Army. After I got back, I started having issues of, I guess, disciplinary issues. Of, the culture in the Army at the time, and probably still going, was, people getting in your face and screaming and hollering. Your NCOs telling you how Cali kept. I had a hard time with that after combat. I had a hard time with that. So I left the Army, and I was kind of listless. I didn't really have direction at the time because I was just so what's the word to describe it? It's tired and I guess worn out, tired, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I did probably the thing that didn't make sense at the time, but long term it made sense. I joined the National Guard. So I joined the National Guard, which let me have the camaraderie that I was missing so much when I got out of the Army. And I could have a little bit of it, on the weekends, a few weeks out of the year. And it helped me. In an odd kind of way, it helped me. It energized me back because I felt that familiarity of that military service out here in the civilian world. And in the National Guard or Reserve with other branches, the guys tend to be very close. So, you know, we help each other. We had that support network that you just don't seem to get when you get out of the Army. You don't, there's nothing that military brotherhood, there's no way to get it back once it's gone. It's just, but we had a little bit of it in the Guard. And I just so happened I was around a lot of police officers and firefighters and things like that in the National Guard. And I was like, you know what? You guys are in uniform, you have an ethos, you have a chain of command. I like that. So I went to the academy, and thankfully my GI Bill paid for the academy and everything. So I ended up getting hired on at Precinct 1. And Precinct 1 has the mental division, has the largest mental division in the United States. So I thought, wow, this is great. This can't be by accident that I've come and looked at this place and this particular agency, and they have this mental health apparatus. So I got assigned to mental health because I asked for it, and I got my certification as a mental health officer. And I realized that it kind of, you don't think of yourself as having mental health challenges. No one thinks of themselves, you know, who are with PTSD. You don't include yourself in mental health. You just don't see yourself that way. So when you're in a job and you're helping other people and you're trying to get people the needs of a hospital and the outpatient help that you can get for them, you realize that each of these people could be you. And that did a lot for me, that the more I helped them, and it was in a way, it's kind of helping myself. And I feel that, you know, when you serve in the Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, Air Force, service and being a part of something bigger than yourself matters. So when you're, that desire to still serve is fulfilled for me through law enforcement, and particularly when I can steer people away from jail towards, you know, the help they need in mental health. It's important to me to not, if I can do my part so that people can get the help they can get psychologically, they can get the medication they need, or the doctor they need, or the social worker they need, the help to disability and things like that. If I can steer them away from, you know, the crimes and the prison and the incarcerating people who with mental illness, and I can get them to the psych hospital or get to the people they need to speak to, that's rewarding for me. And I would hope that if I'm ever in that situation, that somebody would do the same for me.
Absolutely. So it sounds like in your story, after going through the trauma and getting out, there was a sense of feeling a bit lost, and you found your footing again by joining a similar structure in the National Guard, and then another one in the police force, in law enforcement. And so, but the main thing that you said is that camaraderie is what you missed. That sense, and it's a beautiful thing, the military camaraderie, right? Just knowing that even if you despise the person that you're serving with, that you know when things get real, they got your back, you know. And I can definitely see it. I mean, as a police officer, clearly, you know, that's you have continued that to fulfill that need or that preference that you have, you know. So and the stuff you do with mental health, by the way, is great. I want to get more information on that shortly.
Absolutely.
But I want to turn now to Earl and ask, you know, how did you deal with your trauma? And then that is because typically when we're traumatized, we just don't deal with it well. You know, like life gets really hard, and you fall on your face, and there's a turning point where you stand up. If you're lucky, you stand up, whether that be with your family or with your friends or with good people that you meet or institutions you become acquainted with, and then you're given the ladder and you start climbing out of it. So for you, what was your trauma like, and then what was the turning point where you decided to start doing something about it?
Yeah, dealing with that was tough for me coming back. You know, like say having my leg injury. I'm an athlete, so like I love to run. I love getting out there and being active. So for me, it's like the way I just didn't deal with it at all. I avoided it at all costs, and I isolated myself, and just and sit in my sorrow, just like woe is me, and that's how I just dealt with it. And but luckily for me, I had great support from my wife. So when she seen that, she forced me, okay, let's get this. Okay, you don't gotta go outside, but let's sit here. Instead, let's go downstairs. Let's get out of this room. Get some sunlight. Just go sit outside and just think instead of just sitting in there. So she forced me to do that. So But when she helped me, she let me have my moment, and then I like, okay, now I want to do something. I need to get back, because for me it's like I love proving people wrong. That's like, so when the doctor said, you're never gonna, be the same. You're never gonna walk again, and my wife is just telling me they'll see, or you're never gonna run again. They'll see. Okay, I'm gonna prove you wrong. So I use that as a tool to help me get me out of my funk that I was in, and try to really just start proving them people wrong. And I was in the garage one day with my garage door open, and I still have tubes in my legs, and I'm all bandaged up, and but I had one 20-pound weight, and now with my one arm I'm just lifting that 20-pound weight, and the kid walked by, and he just walked by and stared at me. So I'm like, yo, here we go. He's looking at, my bandages. You see, I got this tube in my leg, and everything. So, but he just came up to me and was like, will you train me? I was like, will I train you? Well, yeah, I'll train you, so I'm going inside, and, to my wife, this young man, she's asked me to train him. We're like, oh, she's like, and so she's all excited, because I guess she's seen that spark back in for the first time in a while. So she just rushed out and got by me all this equipment, for training and everything. And I want to do, because I was athlete, so I did football and track and everything. So she bought me all this speed, agility stuff, and got one weight and some duct tape at first, and just put a ladder on the ground, and I went to work. And that helped me a lot. So when I moved to Houston with the family, I found myself like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore, and I'm just in a funk again. I don't know what to do. I don't know anybody from Houston. It's just me out here in my family. And once again, she made the call again, and then she was like, "What do you like doing? What do you want to do?" She's trying to figure stuff out, and I was like, "I want to train kids. Like, I got so much life, so that's what I want to do." So out there once again, out in the field, I was training my kids at the park one day. My son, he was like maybe like 3 or 4, and I'm working with him on a ladder, and then another little kid come, "Can I train?" I'm like, yeah. So he introduced to his parents, and like I just started training at one of the guys that was going to church at the time. He had 3 troubled youth that was having trouble with, and he can't really get to them. And so I started training them, those 3, and we're still close to this day. And from that 3 more came, because they see that I was working with troubled youth, and they see the positive, the positive results that was coming from just training and talking to them and everything, and letting them being so like, oh, what's going on with your leg? What happened to your leg? And me, it's like, that's helping me, because it's like, it's getting me out there to talk about it, because before I wasn't talking about it at all. So these young boys, they think I'm helping them, but they're actually helping me. And so they I'm not out of curiosity because they want to pick with me. They're just out of curiosity. Wow, that's fascinating. You came over, you survived that. Man, that shows strength. That shows, and they're talking, I'm like, wow. So I'm not ashamed, me being ashamed. I wasn't ashamed anymore. And so by the end of that summer, we started off with 1 kid. By the end of the summer, I was in there training 20 kids and everything. And like I said, all these kids are to this day, we're still close and everything. And now they're fathers, and we seen where they had trouble, just with authority, and just coming in trouble in school, but just me come out there being a mentor to them, like I said, once again, brief purpose. And I was able to do that through my situation. So I wasn't able to just look at that situation and be ashamed of it, or be like, I can't do this anymore and everything. But, use that same thing that was, people think that was the thing that tear me down, but I'm helping build so many other people up with the situation that I've been through. And whether it be veterans or youth, man, that like I said, giving me my testimony and let them know how to overcome those different things and have perseverance through those different things, and start looking at don't just look at the downfall, but look what way how that bad situation can help you, then or how did you learn from that situation, and grow from there. That's the time for growth. And so that's where I'm always pushing, and that helped me getting out and training and stuff like that, helped me look at what I've been through from a whole new different lens, to be able to be impactful for myself, for my family, and for the youth and the mentors I'm involved with.
Outstanding. I noticed a common strand between Corporal Brand's story and your story, Earl. And it's One is that you took action after your traumatic experience. But that the thing that, to me, what I'm observing from both of your stories is that what saved you, that saving grace, was purpose. It was purpose, and then also an element of camaraderie. So this sort of camaraderie with you, with Corporal Rand, with you and the National Guard soldiers, or your police officers, but furthermore, purpose. You found purpose in serving the community, and furthermore, in the capacity of a mental health officer, meeting people on their absolute worst day, and then helping them up. And you're really trying to take somebody that was where you were, probably at your worst, to help them climb, showing them the ladder to climb out. Same with you, Earl. For you, it was youth. For you, it was kids that were at the bottom. You gave them a ladder to climb up and out. Earl, in your story, one of the very significant things is your spouse. So if it weren't for her, who knows what would happen?
Right. Yes.
But your spouse, your spouse was the first saving grace before purpose, before anything else. And spouses and caregivers, the family members of somebody who's been traumatized, are often forgotten about. They're often, and this is something that is not commonly known, is often the spouses and the family members, the people around that person that's traumatized, experiencing PTSD, can also start to exhibit symptoms. So we have Dr. Fitzpatrick here today, who is an expert in this matter. And so Dr. Fitzpatrick, what is secondhand or secondary trauma?
Yeah, so it is honestly probably one of the things that might motivate people with trauma to not share their experience, which makes it worse, right? Because they feel like they're isolated and alone and have to carry it all by themselves. Secondary trauma is really been researched just within about the last 15 years or so. And because people in my profession and people in related professions were noticing that they were being profoundly affected just by working with people who have been traumatized.
Yep.
And so very simply, secondary trauma, you can be diagnosed with PTSD simply from listening to the story of somebody who's been traumatized, or being exposed to depictions of it, or seeing video, or just being present while somebody else's life is being threatened. You can develop symptoms of PTSD yourself. And so for family and caregivers of veterans who are coming back, I talk a lot about secondary trauma for people in the helping professions, but of course, the first people who are helping people who are dealing with PTSD are family and caregivers. So it's just being aware of that for yourself, that you too, if you are exposed often without support to the experiences of those that you love and care for, you can begin to develop those symptoms too. And that it's sad. I framed it as we started as a problem, right? Because then people who have been traumatized are likely to just go interior and not share their experience. But it actually can be a way to open out, right? So if a caregiver or a family member is struggling, to be able to say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this too," and let's both go and get help with this, right? I can walk into the clinic with you. I can walk into these spaces where you can get help. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So, and once again, so spouses and caregivers. Oh, sorry. Go.
Yeah, I just
Corporal.
want to add to that,
Yeah.
because I find that that's when I was doing mental health work, and I was in the mental division, I find that that's absolutely on point. One of the things that even when I'm instructing for mental health or crisis intervention, that I tell police officers, even based on my experience, but certainly based on research and from academics and professionals like yourself, is when I am confronted with, or when I have to do an interdiction or a mental health warrant on someone who's in crisis, and that's what the law defines, someone who's a threat to themselves or others. I find that if that particular person in a house or a dwelling or family is in crisis, I find that the family is in crisis. And that's something that I think that we have to, as police officers, we have to remember when you have someone who's living in the house with somebody who's suffering from a particular mental illness or a challenge, a mental challenge. The entire household is experiencing that. And I think that is something we as police officers have to keep in mind when we are digging into our toolbox for de-escalation. And I think that's very on point. That's very true. And I don't think that's talked about enough, is that when it affects one person in the family, everybody else is experiencing that as well. That's very true.
There's many reasons that a person should get help, and especially do it as a family. And so once again, a message to caregivers or family members that are listening to this right now. The symptoms again are hypervigilance or hyperarousal. That's being constantly on alert. That is re-experiencing trauma, having nightmares or flashbacks. That's avoidance, and that's the disturbance of mood, anxiety, depression, guilt, the feelings of guilt. So those are the four major symptoms. And so if you are a family or a caregiver, you're feeling those things, or you're starting to notice that you are changing, let's try to identify that, do something about it, right? So Corporal Moran, over to you. So you have spent years doing meeting veterans on their worst day, meeting veterans and these family members that have been suffering with trauma for years. And I'm just curious, I've seen people hit rock bottom and then come up and thrive and do great.
Right.
What I'm really curious to learn about from you is what common thing do you see? What common mistake led to that condition where you're meeting someone on the first day? And how can it be avoided? Or what can we as a community do about it? What can families do about it?
Wow, that's a doozy of a question there.
Yeah. We'll start with the first part of it. What is there any common thread that you see that leads to you meeting people on the worst day, they're traumatized?
I would say number one, try to stay away from the substances. That can take hold so fast before you know that it's you're what started as a drink now and then can end up being a 6-pack a day, or a fifth a day, or more than that. I would say the comorbidity of having a mental health challenge and self-medicating with substances, that seems to be very common. That seems to be very, very common. Thankfully, I don't like the taste of alcohol, so I never adopted. I've had alcoholics in the family, and I don't want to repeat that, so I don't imbibe. But I find that's a common one. I find that isolation is a big one. There's a tendency for veterans, like I say, you can't find that same level of camaraderie outside of the military. There's no way to duplicate it in full. So you have to. The tendency will be to fall into depression. Now I'm alone. I have nothing. No one cares about me. When you have just like you so rightfully pointed out, you could have an NCO over you who's shouting at you, screaming at you, smoking you till you pass out, running you to death, but that same NCO is going to make sure you are taken care of. The people you may not like in your platoon, push come to shove, they're going to cut for you like a member of your family. So that brotherhood is no longer there. And once that is gone, there's a tendency for you to feel like, well, I have nothing now. No one cares about me. Society doesn't care about me. And the civilian world's brutal. It's a dog eat dog world out there. So I think it's important to watch the substances, which definitely leads credence to staying busy with your fitness and your watching what you put in your body, but also staying away from the substance. Also get out there and mingle. Get out there and find some other groups, find some other veterans groups, find somebody you can release that stuff to. There's a clip in the mental health class that I instruct from a firefighter who's talking about his long challenge with what he's seen over the course of his 30-year career, coupled with the drinking and the substance abuse. And what he says really struck a chord with me. And he said, you have to release it. You have to let it go. You can't blog about it. You can't Facebook it. You have to get out there and release it to somebody. You have to talk. You have to let it out. You can't carry it with you. For him, for that particular firefighter, it was important that for him, he felt he owed society to go to each call fresh, and that's right. And then for himself, he realized that he can't keep that stuff in. You have to give it out. You have to give it away. You have to be like when you eat and then you're hungry again. You have to fill it. So you have to make sure that stuff doesn't fester inside. And I feel that that's very important. You have to have a structure, a support structure. You have to watch the substances. I think that's so important. There's a tendency for us to get to drinking or doing other narcotics and things of that nature. And I think that with anybody, when you have a challenge and you have dead time, I don't think that's a good mix. I just don't think it's a good mix.
Absolutely. Now that's wonderful insight, Corporal Rand. I think and from your view is extremely valid. You're doing the work. You're seeing people meeting on the worst day. And so to recap, what I heard you say is that typically what you'll see when you're meeting veterans on their worst day, and now you're having to be a mental health officer in the law enforcement capacity, you've seen that they've neglected a couple of things. They've neglected moderation of substances, because mental health and substance abuse are typically a comorbidity. The second thing you said is that they're isolating themselves, and they're not getting out. You're isolating yourself. There's no chance that you can get anything off your chest. Right. Secondly, there's no chance that you're going to get that social interaction, or even do anything to find that camaraderie. And the third thing you said is that you need support structure. You need structure. You need a support structure. And so that's having steady people to rely on, good people, good family, good friends, or good people in the institution you belong to, things like that. So those are three excellent kind of prescriptions that you've learned through seeing people that have done the opposite. And so once again, that's moderation of substances. Right. That's not isolating. That's also finding a home, finding a support structure. Right. So that's gold. That's gold right there. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Earl, I want to talk to you a little about post-traumatic growth. One really interesting thing about your story is that and what Corporal Rand and what Earl have in common is that they found purpose again. Mm-hmm. But for you, it was a bit of mindset that really was the fuel to get you up that ladder, right? To get up and out of that dark place. Is that you had this perseverance attitude, this attitude that if you tell me I can't, I'm going to try. I'm going to prove you wrong. Mm-hmm. But really, that came from sports. That came from the military training. Mm-hmm. But you've done years of helping other as a mentor, years of helping kids and veterans understand through physical fitness, push them beyond to show them that they have more in them, they have more fight in them that they can apply to their challenges in life. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done, but furthermore, the lessons that you could teach other people from that approach of mindset?
Oh yeah, it's just your mindset. It all starts with your mind. Wherever your head goes, your body's gonna go with it. When you say you can't do it, you're not gonna do it. If you say start believing that you can, you'll see a different outcome when it comes to that. And so I learned that firsthand through my experience. Once I was able to get out and really get out and try certain things and push myself through certain situations, and I seen I was capable of doing it. And I been able to defeat the odds when it comes to those different things. But I see that with kids as well. If I tell them you can do one more push-up, out here, imagine what you can do in the classroom if you push yourself a little hard. Imagine what you can do at home for your parents and for your siblings if you say yes, I can do that. And so once you shift your mindset, you saying yes, then imagine what the possibilities are. Yes, you're gonna fail. Sometimes it happens. And that's okay, because that's life. But you never lost. When you say, we always tell the kids when you take that L, it's not the L is just not you losing, but it's a learning experience. And so that's how we just try to reframe their mind to think, of course, thinking positive, but but also just thinking like, okay, having a spirit of determination and to be able to see where those outcomes bring. It's not gonna always be perfect, but you're moving forward in the right direction. So always telling them fall forward.
Fall forward.
Yeah, so always being able to do that.
I like that.
Yeah, so but just doing that and just mentoring these kids, it really helped me out a lot doing that. And one of the things saying, you're not finished until you're done. I got it, but really did get that from my wife again. You're not finished until you're done. So if you didn't finish that, 100-meter run, you're not finished yet. You're not just finished when you want to quit, and so that's why I adopted that for my kids, but also now tell the veterans, let's view this from a different angle. How did you get stronger from that situation? And we do that, and that was for me, that was, because it's important to have that conversation, talk to people. For me, it was tough go talk to a counselor or go to a group setting because I didn't, to me, that was like, I'm weak. You know, why am I doing this? You know, and everything, because just the mindset I was in. But we go to the gym, we go to this veteran to a gym, and now we start talking about certain different situations. Now we're talking, I say, okay, this is helpful as well, and everything. And you don't have to be ashamed. Once again, being vulnerable, it's not weak being vulnerable. You know, it's just so understanding that concept and viewing that, knowing that, you know, us lifting, not just lifting weights, but we really having a therapy session because you can't those things off your chest. Now you come into a grips with it. Now you can go talk to a professional about it to help you walk even further in what you in your purpose and you know, overcoming those different things that you're dealing with, you know. And so, like you're saying, having those different type of things set up, that's why physical fitness, you know, the importance of physical gains, and not just for, you know, of course your physique, but your confidence level, and also just, you know, the mental gains that could go inside of that. That's why I always push, you know, if you push yourself physically, mentally you can do the same thing. Yep. And everything, and it all starts in the mind. So I always try to bring that around full surface. Like, I can't come in here, you know, I don't feel like talking. I'm like, hey, we're not gonna talk, it's gonna work out. You know, you're not gonna come in here and squat 100 pounds, 300 pounds. You gotta work yourself to that point. So when it comes to your mental, you're not gonna just be, okay, I'm just gonna, you know, deal with this traumatic situation and just be here back to 70. And, you know, no, we're gonna work ourselves back there, do that, and always, I say that, like, having that camaraderie, which is knowing that you're not doing it alone, and we're gonna do this together. Do fitness and do physical fitness and do your mental game, mental fitness, like I like to call it, and just doing that together. And then we got a team of people around us, professionals, that's gonna help you guide you in that right step. And, you know, that's the approach I took.
Outstanding. Yeah, that is so many good quotes. I would wear a T-shirt. I wear a T-shirt with half the things you said. Hey, but you know, but one thing to remember is that what we've talked about so far is what we've done. One, the wisdom of seeing so much suffering, what the commonality was, what was neglected, and that was, you know, isolation. That was not being moderate with the consumption of substances, and it was not having a proper support structure.
Mhm.
Question I had to you. You were explaining that the idea of mindset and that perseverance mindset, and also getting out of the structure in which you view the world with, and turn it a little bit, and look at it a little different angle, and try to find something, or see challenges or suffering as an opportunity for growth. Yeah. Right? That is a powerful mental tool to reassess your current situation and see what good can come out of this. Yeah. But it's important to say that, you know, suffering. We're talking a lot about veterans and youth and stuff. But suffering is universal for all human beings. It's universal. I'm really curious to hear from you, Dr. Fitzpatrick, and I'm thinking in the solutions or you know, positive stories now, because human suffering is common. You are a mental health professional. Is there a common thing that you've seen that people that have been traumatized, where they did something, or there was a certain attitude or a few steps they took to come up and out? Is there a common thing that you've seen that you want to share?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, the first thing I always, the longer I do this work, the more the more convinced I am that most of it is paying attention.
Paying attention.
Right.
Interesting.
It's just paying attention. And when you were talking about substance use, for instance, like, so when we're reaching out for a drink, or we're reaching out for substances, what we're doing is we're hurting, right? Or we're having an experience we don't want to have, right? We want to change how we're feeling. That's what we're doing, right? Yes. We want to change how we're feeling. So we just notice that, like noticing that when I'm reaching out for that third beer, right? That's because I'm having an experience that I'm still trying to change. And you can draw your attention to that. And I think for the people that I've worked with who have been successful in addressing the trauma, which, you know, it's that willingness to pay attention to what's actually happening, what's actually going on, and to not judge it, because I think it's easy for us, and I keep thinking about substance use, like it's easy for us to judge the person who is using substances, and easy for us to judge ourselves when we do, right? This is when we engage in a lot of different behaviors. But if we can take a pause before we get to that judgment and say, no, this is happening for a reason, right? You know, we use the language of self-medicating. And that's really good language. It's like, yeah, we're trying to not feel what we're feeling. So I guess I would say, I don't know if it's,
that's
answers your question. It's like, paying attention and not judging what's happening, right? Allowing ourselves to pay attention.
All right, fantastic. Well, it seems like we do have a question from the audience now. So let's go ahead and address that.
PTSD associated with military deployment is different from PTSD from other sources.
Okay, so the question was, does the panel feel that the PTSD originating from military service is different from it originating from the regular civilian population? I'll turn that to either one of you. Yeah.
I have come across people who have had traumatic events in their lives as a police officer, and I don't see a huge difference in the way that it surfaces. The challenges are, the method and how you got it is different, maybe different, but it's as the doctor said, it's about trauma, right? So it's about experiencing trauma, and I find that we have a lot of people in society who have experienced sexual assault, or who've experienced a violent assault, an attack, or who have experienced a fatality, a traffic fatality where you survived and somebody you're with didn't survive. So then the same type of questions are, why did I survive? Why did my husband survive? Why did my child survive? These are I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that. And when I speak to people like that, I have to, my heart goes out to them. They're experiencing something that I think is far worse than I've experienced, when you've experienced the loss of a close loved one, a child, or a family member. So I find that level of trauma, the pain is universal. I think that the way that a veteran, the way that they came to grips with having their stress disorder, maybe in different circumstances, but I certainly feel that the pain is universal. And like we talked about earlier in the panel, there's 6% of the population who is not military experiences as well. In a country of 300 million people, that's a lot of people. So I definitely find in my line of work that there are people walking around who have it, and they need to be helped. They need to be reached out to, just like we do in the military. There's certainly a lot of police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical techs who are walking around, and there's no dialogue. There's no help for them at all. We are, as veterans, it's so high in the military population that it's addressed. People, firefighters, there's just nothing. There's really nothing for them. The stigma is very high, and that's something that even in the military, I'd say when I first got in, you said you're having problems, that you need to talk to somebody. They tell you take a knee, drink water, pack it with dirt, that kind of stuff. Walk it off, that kind of thing. So the culture has changed, and if the military culture can change, then certainly other areas of society can change, because that's the ultimate type A alpha type environment. So if that can change for the better, then we can do it in civilian society as well. It's just a matter of talking about it. It's just a matter of making people coming forth and talking about it, studies being done by folks like yourself. And we have to remember, when there's studies done, we have to take part, right? We have to do our part to step forward and say, I would like to be a part of that as well.
So, Dr. Fitzpatrick, what is stigma and what can we do about it?
Boy, how much time we got? It's at 10 seconds, 10 minutes. Okay. We won't spend 10 minutes on that. Stigma is very simple, which is that it's a social prohibition about talking about something, right? Or acting in certain ways. And so, and if we circle back around to this idea of secondary trauma, this is a little bit of a window on it, right? It's uncomfortable to be exposed to some of the experiences that veterans have had, or it's difficult to be exposed to trauma. So that's part of the reason that we have stigma in the context of police, of first responders in the military. It is a hazard of the work. And so Earl was talking about mental toughness earlier, right? So training to be mentally tough. Well, mental toughness has to be nuanced, right? Right? Mental toughness can look like, I'm going to deny, I'm not going to pay attention. I'm going to deny what's happening, right?
Right.
Or
it can look like, I am going to actually pay attention, and that may actually be the toughest thing you have to do, is to actually pay attention to what's really going on. But you can find if you're in a social context where people don't really want to listen to what your experience is, they're not really able to do it. It's a small step from that to saying it's not okay to talk about it, right? It's not okay for you to feel hurt. It's not okay for you to be depressed. It's not okay for you to have a substance issue. It's not okay for any of this to be, and we're just not going to look at it, right? So it's a stigma.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that explanation. It's so important because it really, I guess, getting better for an individual kind of becomes a team sport. You know, you and your support structure, if you have one. If you're doing it alone, the odds go down a little bit unless you're extremely exceptional and resilient. Do you have any more questions from the audience? Okay, not at this time. Resources? Okay, yeah. So that is really important. So this is before we get to resource, let's recap a little bit here. So far, what we talked about is trauma, specifically it manifesting into PTSD. And so I believe everybody, you don't get out of life alive, but you certainly don't get out of it without scars and bruises and scrapes and trauma, right? But for the civilian population, 6% of that is going to have PTSD, and 13% of the military population is going to have PTSD. And once again, what is PTSD? It is hypervigilance. It is having nightmares or flashbacks. It is avoidance, including substance abuse, and it is disturbance of mood, depression, anxiety, or guilt. Okay, and so it is not exclusive to military veterans, and it is transmissible. It's a transmissible disease to your family members, to those that are around you the most, to your caregiver. And so some of the things that have pulled panel members up and out of this and gave them the ladder to crawl up and out of that hole was purpose. It was support structure. It was actioning on meaning, not actioning on meaning, not isolating, and moderation. So Corporal, actually both of you are sober. Corporal Moran and Earl don't drink alcohol. So I mean that's rare, but yeah, no, thank goodness, you know. So those are some of the things, and then also it's mindset. It's falling forward, as Earl said. It's a willingness to pay attention, the skill of introspection, or the skill of being able to stop, pause, and instead of avoiding the big giant elephant chasing you, stop, turn around, and recognize, look in the eyes and recognize it. So the willingness to pay attention to your own symptoms. So those are the things that we talked about. Those are some of the methods that provide success for you, your clients, the people that you work with. I really want to point that out. So the next thing is, if you are experiencing PTSD, if you are experiencing depression, anxiety, if you or a family member, someone you know is going through this, what are the resources?
You guys want to jump in? Sure. Well, I find that there are many. There's organizations, certainly like you all have. You know, that's an excellent resource. If it's immediate, from a law enforcement point of view, you can always call us. We have teams that specialize in mental health. We have mental health special operations. We have crisis intervention teams. We have crisis intervention response teams. Even from a law enforcement view, there's so many different agencies with assets towards mental health and especially trained and experienced so that they know how to speak and they know how to diffuse situation and de-escalate, and they know how to redirect. So I would definitely say if all else fails, give us a call. We know what we're doing when it comes to mental health. 25% of law enforcement officers or law enforcement is made up of military veterans. So there's always going to be a military veteran to talk to. If I had a mental health warrant and or if I saw a pool of mental health warrants and there were veterans in there, I always grab the warrants because I always want to speak to the veterans, to the point where a lot of the guys that I work with would call me when they have, or still call me when they have a veteran. We're lucky in Houston that we have the VA. That's at any time we can call the VA and speak to somebody. That's not an avenue that I use personally or have used, but it's certainly an avenue that the VA has a 24-hour hotline that you can call. And I think, that's something that I think all veterans should look at as well. I never got to the point, thankfully, I never got, to the point where I had to, but I certainly, I give that out when I speak to a veteran, or if I meet a homeless veteran on the streets, I hand out some resources regarding who they can call and what agencies around the city can give them some help.
Awesome. Yes, for me, I work with an organization called Combined Dorms, where we help veterans, in their own transition, but it really doesn't matter what area you got out in. We have well over 150 different veteran organizations and over 500 different resources that's available to the veterans. But then that ranges from homelessness assistance, mental health, even I think for caregivers as well. Education, they need help with the VA benefits, and the list goes on. So we have those resources available to veterans. So please, if you need more information, go to www.combineddorms.us and get connected to some of the resources we have out here, and get connected to these organizations that are there to help.
Outstanding. And for civilian population as well, Eastern Seals Greater Houston does serve the general population. But if you just search mental health providers, or even search treatment for anxiety, treatment for depression, treatment for secondhand trauma, or trauma exposure, or whatever, you're going to find tons of resources. If you have insurance, this is covered by deductible. If you don't have insurance, there are nonprofits out there. So Nonprofit Mental Health Houston, if you search that, you're going to find tons of resources out there, like Eastern Seals of Greater Houston. There's tons of stuff out there, but more importantly, it's taking the first step. It's knowing that, it's paying attention, as Dr. Fitzgerald said, paying attention, knowing that it's time to do something. Talk to other people about it. If you're on the cusp of seeking mental health, but you haven't taken the step, let somebody that you love know about it. They'll help to encourage you and help lead you there if you have a good support structure. What I will say is that what you can expect is commit to a minimum of 8 sessions. Right. Commit to a minimum. That way you can really chew on that trauma, and know that this is what I'll tell the audience. In my view, trauma is never over. You can really push it down and chop it into small pieces, but know that it's just like a car. It's something that requires maintenance for your lifetime. Something that requires maintenance. Great things that we've learned today is that there needs to be an outlet. You cannot isolate. There can't be comorbidities. To me, it's a team sport. You get better and you live life with the people in your community, with the people in your family. So that's my statement. But I do want to turn it to y'all for a last word, a last bit. And so we'll start with you, Corporal Moran. Do you have any last bits?
Yeah, I'd also like to say, since we do, and I wanted to add this as a resource, we do have, like I said, the largest mental health division in the United States. We have 40 deputies strictly for mental health within that division. So if you're a loved one, if you're a family member, or if you experience yourself, but certainly if you're a family member and you want to get help for somebody in your family, or a friend, or somebody you know, please call our dispatch, 713-755-7618, and ask for our mental health division. They will show you and let you know how you can go about getting a mental health warrant. And when I say warrant, I don't mean something where someone is arrested or anything like that. A mental health warrant is when 2 mental health deputies will come out to your home, your dwelling, and we'll give that person, we'll speak to that person, and we'll take that person to the hospital. That's all it is. We're a ride to the hospital for them. We know how to speak to people who are experiencing crisis at that point in time in their life. We pride ourselves on helping, taking people to where they can get help and not compounding their problems by arresting them or speaking down to them. That's not the type of area of law enforcement that the mental health deputies work in. So we will do what we can to get that person the help they need at the time they need it. So please make use of us. We're out there. It's a service to the community of Harris County, and we work entire Harris County. So if you're out in Crosby, or if you're in Highlands, or if you're in Baytown, or if you're in Spring, we'll come out there and pick up your loved one and make sure they get the help they need.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Corporal Moran. And once again, that phone number for the mental health department for Harris County was 755-7618.
Yes,
for the
that'll
mental
go,
health division.
yes, sir. That'll go right to our dispatch and they'll route that to the mental health division.
And once again, they're not sending people out there to just arrest people. This is the right to the hospital.
Right, and they don't come out, they don't even wear uniforms like I do. They wear a polo shirt and like 511 pants. And they're an unmarked car, so they're not, your neighbors won't see you getting into a marked police car. And as long as you're agreeable and there won't even be handcuffs and things like that. So it's an area of law enforcement that I'm lucky that I found, because you can make a difference. You can help people when they're at their worst. And we see the patient again, and that's what they become a patient in the hospital at that point. And when we bring you all the paperwork associated, who can help you out. And the hospitals themselves have social workers, they have psychologists that will try to get the proposed patient into outpatient programs. It's literally an entire apparatus here in Harris County where they can get you the help you need. It's just a matter of following through, following up with it. So definitely, if you're a family member, a loved one, please make use of it. We want to help.
That's so good to know. That's so good to know. Dr. Fitzpatrick, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I want to underline what Corporal Moran had to say, just to say that I got to work a bit with his division in that during Harvey, and they do just fantastic work. I'd say too, on the subject of resources, so we talked about the VA, the psychosocial rehabilitations, I think it's rehab center at the VA does wonderful work, and it actually connects me to something else, which is that I don't work with veterans, I work with a more general population, but my understanding is that particularly for veterans, and you've heard us talk about it a little bit today, hearing the stories of other veterans is really important, right? Because the experiences that nobody else will understand your experience. So places like I think it's PSRC at the VA, and also there are a lot of other nonprofit organizations specifically devoted to putting you in contact with other veterans who have dealt with mental health issues and are coming out the other side. Please do seek those out for the community, for family and caregivers. There are organizations like Family Houston and the Montrose Center. Our local mental health authority is the Harris Center, Houston Galveston Institute. There are a lot of low fee or free resources out there.
Absolutely. Earl, any last words for the audience?
Yes, I would just say, really get connected with combined dorms. If you're a veteran and your family members as well, we have, like I said, tons of resources available for you, homelessness assistance. Like I said, job placement, sometimes that's going to help out if you have anything, let's just say if you are dealing with PTSD or something like that. We got so many different resources that can help you with your next journey in life as well. We even got a free gym that's out there. We have boxing, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, CrossFit. We got yogas on the weekends and Muay Thai. So it's all free. Definitely come on and get that camaraderie back again. But as you come there, get connected with some of the resources and get connected to some of the veteran organizations that they do volunteering with, like Miss Continues or Travis Mayer Foundation. It's a swarm of different information that you could definitely benefit from and make your way of life so much easier. So definitely come to go to our location is 2929 McKinney Street. You can walk in, or you can come visit us online at combinedorms.us, create a profile, and have somebody call you within 24 or 48 hours to get you connected to the help, get you the help that you need.
Fantastic. Well, I want to say a special thank you to the panelists today. Thank you for sharing your personal stories. Thank you for sharing your insight, your wisdom, and your knowledge as well. I think we learned a lot. I learned a whole lot today from talking to you all. But I'm truly grateful for the opportunity for the Buffalo Soldiers Museum. Thank you to the Young Center, to Combined Arms as well, and of course to Harris County Constable's Office. So thank you so much for being here, y'all. And thank you. Appreciate y'all. See y'all later. Have a great weekend, everybody. All right.
Appreciate you.
Fantastic.